Today on UVA Legends podcast, I have my fellow 88 UVA grad, Zena Howard, who was in the architecture school and has done so many amazing things in her career. She's a principal at Perkinsville, major architectural firm. She was a senior project manager at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. What is the way you say it? Say that quickly, Zena. How do you prefer to say it?
Namak.
What's
That's
that?
our namak
Namak.
is our sort of term of endearment for
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
mouth. It's a mouthful,
It's
but
a
it's
mouthful. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
such a beautiful building. But also,
yeah.
she's working now on the Motown Museum and some of the buildings around the original Motown building, the Bezos Learning Center, Destination Crenshaw, which is one of the biggest outdoor art and cultural celebrations, exhibit in the country. It's a celebration of Black contribution to Los Angeles. So many other things. Zena, so nice to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me yet again. It's always a pleasure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well look, my interview with you is probably one of the best ones I've ever done, and not because of me, but because of you. So people should go back and listen to it. Some of the things that Zena's worked on are just unbelievable, and her rise to the top of her industry. But look, as I reached out to you because I've been hearing the noise about the Smithsonian. Um, um, and I know we talked last time about the 100 years that went into the idea of having a Smithsonian for African American history and culture,
Mhm.
and all the politics that went into building it, and then all the things of any large project, especially in that area of DC, that you had to deal with. And now it's the most popular museum in the country. It's done incredibly well. Now we've been hearing that it's under threat in terms of, I don't know how far this goes, but in terms of substance. And I just first of all, I wanted to get your impression of what have you heard, and what are some of the things that we should be thinking about right now?
Well, thanks. Yeah, obviously, that museum was not just critical to our country and our people, but really the world. And Julian, you're right. The level of attendance, and here we are, 8 years out, or coming up on 8 years out of the or more than 8 years, I guess, at this point of the opening of that museum, and it still remains strong in terms of attendance and what it means. And I think the what's happening today, obviously, we all have a lot of strong opinions about it, but I think what's happening today is is a attempt to control the narrative of certain museums. I think in from a political arena, recent executive orders and uh, policies have come out that have really wanted to control the content, the narrative, the stories that are told at our, not just Smithsonian, it's all of our cultural institutions, from the museums to the parks to anything that has what we call interpretive, content or storytelling. So, there is a clear directive to bring back statuaries and narratives that do not reflect the diversity of who we are as a country. And I think the Smithsonian has been clear, and I know Lonnie Bunch has been clear that the Smithsonian will not, will remain apolitical, will not sort of, fall off one side or the other. So we can all look at this as a political issue, but I look at it more as a pattern that America has been through before, where the voices of diverse people have tried to be silenced, but I also know the hope that we have overcome those in the past. We've told the stories where my work has been grounded in storytelling, in the built-in expression, in the built environment. Our people, African Americans, have always had a strong history of oral storytelling. And so I think we'll sort of get through all of this, hopefully, in that way, even if certain plaques and monuments and signs and the like are considered un-American.
Well, that's really tough. Zena, how important do you think history is in this time of incredible job losses? People are losing their jobs for no reason, just out of efficiency, I guess. And there are that we have some issues with people being deported, and we're working whether there's process or not. We have this tariff regime that's going on, and we're struggling economically now. Universities are also being threatened in the same way that parks are being threatened in terms of content. How important is history? If all this stuff is going on, and we're just trying to get through the day, and the news is so fast and furious, is how important do you think history is? To me, I love history. I'm a history buff, as you know. That's why I do this. But is this as grave as some of the other challenges that we face right now?
I think it's probably one of the most important challenges we face right now. Um, your question is really appropriate. How important is history? But there's a parallel question of who tells the story, who writes the narrative, who rewrites the narrative, who erases our historical context, our history. And so I think you know if we don't understand obviously where we've come from, it's difficult to kind of forge a path forward. And I think people in this country whose histories have been hidden, untold, they and extreme efforts have been made to try to daylight those histories. There is a negative response to that because it's important that people honor our history and what's going on. So it's when we try to uh, deny historical facts or people's history, it only leads to further racial and social divide. I mean, everyone wants to be seen for their experiences and their people and who they are and celebrated for who they are. But if you are denied that, if you're denied, telling the truth, if you're denied, even, acknowledging and talking about slavery or civil rights, all of these things, it's extreme censorship and rewriting of history and sort of sanitizing in a way that says we will only celebrate heroes and not tell the stories, the challenges, and the successes that made America great. They both did. This country is what it is because of all that we went through and overcome. And if you can only talk about, sanitize everything so that it looks like it was all good, everything was successful, and we tell none of the struggles because that's considered unpatriotic or un-American when we talk about our real issues. We're headed to a dark place. Our future is more dark if we don't understand our history.
Yeah, and it's so strange because every country, every great country, and every country has their struggles of women's rights, minority
Mhm.
rights. They all have it. France, Great Britain, they all, and it was part of their evolution to where we are now. So that's why it's so confusing. And also, we've always had kind of like I would call safe heroes, and I don't want that to be offensive. We always had the Booker T. Washingtons
Yeah.
and even Martin Luther King, and he's a great man, but they were the opposite of like Du Bois, and they were the opposite of Malcolm X, and of Nat Turner. But over
Mhm.
time, we've begun to embrace both sides of the struggle, the more militant side, and also the more civil side of the struggle. I guess what then has surprised me is heroes that have always been safe, like Harriet Tubman. It's really
Yes. For
It's
God's sake.
Harriet Tubman is like one of the most. It's like the safest one in the world. She was nonviolent. She risked her life. She saved so many people to the detriment of nobody. Jackie Robinson. I mean,
MLK, Jackie Robinson.
who would not like Jackie? So that's the thing is, it's strange to me is that we're trying to, and the things they say even about like former uh, Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, who was a combat veteran, and a distinguished person, Colin Powell. I've heard things of him being kind of marginalized historically.
Mhm.
Some of the heroes that they're marginalizing have never been controversial. I mean, that's the thing that's so strange to me about the whole thing.
True. Even we're talking about the museum, Lonnie Bunch in recent, just uh, we're all targets, ultimately you and I, you
Mhm.
know, anything that we've done good, the narrative is flipped and it's reversed. What's good is called bad and what's challenging is called good. So erasing all, it's a head shocker that Harriet Tubman, we all were like, who to thunk, as they say. Yeah. And so the attempt is to not involve race in anything. So that's the goal, right? Anything, because certainly race has never been an issue in the United States, and there is no such thing as a privileged class or you know
Yeah.
or majority. It's flipping a narrative. So yes, we're at this moment, but the hope is, and you talked about some of the projects that we're working on. The hope is that although the nation, the federal part of the nation, is still taking this stance, um, we still have hope because the people, our values, our nature, we have our own platforms to keep
Hmm.
saying these stories. Individual states have their own rights. You mentioned some of the projects I'm working on. I'm very encouraged about a project that I'm working on deep in the heart of Mississippi.
Hmm.
And this is a really challenging project telling a difficult post-narrative story, a story post-Civil War. And in a state that even every time even when I go there and engage in people, just simply do not recognize that war was fought, that slavery had anything to do with it. you know and so you kind of sit here in 2024, 2025, and you realize that there are people, they're not just saying this for just propaganda or dogma. They believe it.
Yeah.
They believe that the Civil War was a war over states' rights, a war about Northern aggression, and slavery had little to do with it. So when you travel around to different areas of country, you realize how we got to this moment because there's so many people that believe that. But you also realize that there's so many people in still influential, powerful positions that are still pushing forward and telling the authentic truth. And because we have truth on our side, the real truth, and not sort of a sanitized version of it, I think I firmly believe we'll get through this, and I see it in all of the people that I'm working with, the clients that I'm working with, the philanthropic organizations that are doubling down to support diverse institutions, and so I'm encouraged.
That's great. You have to be positive. My mother always tells me it was much worse when I was a kid. You guys, you just got to find a way. The project in Mississippi, is that with Byron Stevens by any chance? I know that he's from Mississippi, isn't he? Or is he from
Yeah.
Alabama?
No, he's from Alabama.
He's
But
Alabama.
that project, that project is not with Byron. That's he who did the incredible I said everybody knows Museum of the lynching. So but this one is a new interpretive center.
Yeah.
The state of Mississippi and this deals with the national park. So this has two sort of issues, the or two sort of clients or objectives, the state of Mississippi and also the National Park Service. Um, and so it celebrates that historic Vicksburg campaign that we all knew when Grant's incredible siege and campaign to take Vicksburg, and Vicksburg fell, I think, less than 2 days before Gettysburg. And so, but Lincoln always said, without Vicksburg, because it was sort of the central point on the Mississippi River for the Confederacy to receive and send troops and trade goods. So Vicksburg had to be taken, and Lincoln was adamant that it would. So of course Grant was the hero in all of this. In that it wasn't only a campaign, it was a siege that locked down the city. So the state of Mississippi is telling, if you go to the national park now, you sort of get the everything ends with the war stories. So this center is going to tell the stories beyond the war. It's going to really look at Reconstruction authentically, the successes and the failures of Reconstruction, the involvement of the U.S. colored troop, and and still there are people that in the South, in certain areas of Mississippi, that believe that U.S. troops or African Americans that fought on the Confederate side of the Civil War, you know, did that of their own free will.
Yeah. Like everything else.
Is there free will when there's an imbalance of power? Let's not have that conversation. But this is the type I share this with you so that you understand. These people believe it. They in their soul they believe this, and so how you navigate engaging with certain audiences, with people that have this belief, and still come out with a center, a design that's reflective of all of this. That's the struggle. That's the crux of my work. That's what I'm going to continue to do, regardless of who's in office or in power.
Right. Yeah, I love the series Grant on the History Channel. I learned all about
Yeah.
Vicksburg, and I guess it
Yeah.
was a really risky
Mm.
venture to take Vicksburg. But Reconstruction is a story that it's never fully told, and
Yeah.
it shows the risk that economic power is not going to be enough. And people a lot of times argue that it's economic power. It's not about the law. It's not about voting. Well, it absolutely is, because nothing changed down there until 1963, or things changed extremely slowly. So that's a story that we can't hear enough about.
Yeah.
Um, Zena, you're getting hit on both sides because you're also a woman, and like for example, there are four women generals. I think 2 months ago. They're all gone. There's none anymore.
Mm.
There were several high-profile African American generals that are gone, and they had none of these people had any performance hit, and they were replaced by folks that weren't more qualified. I guess they're going to go a different direction or outside the box. So I'm not sure how equity can be judged if people who you replace people with greater qualifications, you replace people with lesser qualifications, people that were
Yeah.
greater. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, that's a lot.
Mhm.
Anyway, you come from an area where there's less than 1% of Black architects in your industry. I believe that's what you told me last time, and I don't think things have changed too much.
Females, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so DEI must be a very strange thing for you because you've probably always been in a room of men most of your career, or at least there wasn't very many African Americans.
Absolutely. I think on the last time we talked, I shared with you when I came out of architecture school, there were only 80, I think, African American female architects in the country, the whole country, 80 that you could fit them all in the same room. Now we're pushing towards almost to 600. And it's been because when you make a decision to go into this field, it's not easy early on because, early on you're like, my goodness, I could do something else and get paid better. I could do something else and work less hours. I could do something else and not have this long kind of throughput from education to getting your professional credentials. There's so many things. So it really takes people, the women and the Black women that are in this profession are and that are staying in it. They're rock stars. I mean, we just they're some of the most phenomenal women that I know because it takes that grit. It took me years to be in a room with even anybody that had my same gender, much less my same color, you know? And so that's why I've been intentional about with my career about moving in a direction that celebrates my own culture, my own history, as best as I can with clients that align with those values of putting this forth. And you see that in some of the projects, and all of the projects, I think that I like. It's just a blessing, right? I mean, in all the projects I align with, they have to have that. They have to have some objective, some goal to uplift marginalized people or people whose voices haven't been heard. And I think the entrance of women and Black women in the profession has buoyed me and has helped us all kind of come together towards that goal. So it's tough. It's tough. It's never easy being in a I'm often the only person Black person in the room. So the woman issue is is always an ongoing struggle. And I will say this, I talk to a lot of women, young mothers trying to make it in this profession who have kids and a family, Black women who are trying to push for diversity in having more women and voices of the room, but also representing their own culture. It's not easy, and we lose a lot of women in this profession because of it. Oftentimes during the time they'll get all the way through, we graduate the highest amount of women from architectural schools, the highest GPAs. So they get out of college and they're fantastic. They come into their internship, they're fantastic, but then there comes that challenge with childbearing and family and the rigors of the profession. And that's oftentimes when they might decide to exit the profession for something else. And so we're working on that. It's critical.
Yeah, so I was talking to your soror Beth Ridley about this, and Beth consults on DEI, but all issues with
Mhm.
corporations and governments. And she made the point, in frustration that maybe there's a way we can talk about some of these issues that folks who for some reason felt left out when we talked about DEI can be part of it, which I think is really hard for someone like you to imagine, being you've been the only person in the room for so long. And me, like I sell to law firms, and
Mhm.
there's very few African Americans in my industry, even though my
Mhm.
company has two other very successful guys as well, which is great. But generally, there's not a lot of us. So it's weird to hear this, it's almost like we're dominating all the jobs, and it's not the case. So it's like, well, how, and Beth and I were talking, how do we talk about these things differently? But do you have any insight for us?
Oh, it's so funny. These are the conversations we've been having because we're all censored, right?
Mhm.
For all intents and purposes. You know, we can't words that are so wholesome and, diversity, equity, inclusion, we can't. But speaking through what will never change are our values. And you can't legislate or put out an executive order for people's values. So continuing to talk about what we do from the lens of our values. Like I will always approach everything I do in my profession, and actually in a lot of things I do, from a diverse, multidisciplinary approach. I mean, you can't realize projects truthfully in the way that we realize them without diverse voices. So that's a value. You know, no one wants to be in an echo chamber. I don't care you how right you think your position is. So, always prioritize the contributions of everyone. And when you talk about recognizing contributions of everyone, that does not marginalize the majority, does not marginalize, you know, white people. And it's not one or the other, it's both and. So I will, for me, I will continue to do that. I'll also continue to be a good steward of the resources that God has given us on this planet, on whether it's really recognizing that words that are now deemed not good, like sustainability, resiliency, honoring the resources. I will continue to do that. So I think we need to just continue to speak to the fact that our values are uncompromised. No, throughout our history, no policy, no president can change values. They can change policy. They can change law. They
Right.
can't change values.
That's right. At least not in a good way.
Yeah,
At least, I mean, they can, but hopefully they will try.
yeah.
You just mentioned sustainability, and when we talked last time, you said that the great thing about women in architecture is that they have more of a focus. They're more likely to have a focus on sustainability and in terms of how a building relates to its environment and other types of issues that a male architect may not necessarily have. And obviously, it's a generalization, but I would like to see more women in politics. I feel women make better decisions for the masses than men do.
Mhm.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. I found that as fascinating that when we talk about DEI, we forget about some of the things that diversity truly makes us better and makes the architect more effective.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned a project another project I'm working on the other end of the mall for the Smithsonian, which will start construction within a few months. But you mentioned the Bezos Learning Center. And the landscape architect on this, I don't know if she wants me to mention her name, but it's phenomenal.
Inspired
And
nowadays. Yeah.
we were so blessed to put her on our team. African American female, with a small landscape practice. And so I remember, we were talking about building a team, and we had some experience with her on very small projects. But I remember looking at her website and thinking, this woman just brings such an approach to landscape design, all the things that you're talking about, understanding, the resilience issues, the sustainability issues, the cultural landscape issues, the cultures of plants and how they support everything. And I was like, we have to talk to her. We have to, and she's just been phenomenal. But you see, that's an African American female with a that's practicing these beautiful spaces, now working on a significant project, bringing that lens forth. I just am so appreciative of the work that she does, and you see that often. You see women pushing that forward. You see women caring about, how these plants respond to their environment. Native plants and using them appropriately, but not trying to force them. It's all these types of sensibilities that we see in women, and it's a joy to have this profession, which decades ago was not diverse, and we saw the impact of that, and now we see architecture and design that's more sensitive, that's beautiful, but that supports our well-being, and um is not always classical.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's a nod to other executive orders that state that all federal buildings must now be classical. So, it's bringing a sense that an architecture stylistically that is of our place and time and that we can all relate to, but is not trying to replicate bygone errors.
Yeah. Is it the same for Black architects? Are there things like people like you and Kevin Holland, our UVA classmate, when you guys started putting work together, did you guys have a different way of looking at projects because you're African American and because your background? Or maybe it's just that you could relate to the area where a building was going to be because of your background? Are there things that Black architects do differently because of their background?
I think the same that we're all trained the same. So our in architecture school, and obviously today I'm speaking from 35 years ago when I was in architecture school. Schools are much different now, and you can talk to Marlo, who's the dean of
Yeah.
the School of Architecture at UVA now, and is just a fantastic person. So we've changed over the years, but 35 years ago we were all trained the same, and I would say this was the difference. Um, I know when I was in architecture school and coming out, I felt like I really had to you learn the things that make architecture great, like proportion, light and shadow, all these things that you are sensitive to, tonality, scale, all of those concepts of architecture. You learn those the same, but then how you take those and apply them and express them. 35 years ago, you felt like you had to conform to whatever the trend of the moment was, right? So I think as Black architects, we are sensitive to the fact that architecture in a built environment has been used to exclude us. It's been used to privilege other people. It's been used as a device. I mean, there and even urban design, all design, landscape architecture, urban design. There were policies that kept us out of a lot of wonderful places to live. So I think that what we bring is I think we kind of ushered in that more so than anybody, that notion of let's make sure that whatever we design is culturally accessible to all. It doesn't represent stylistically a style or an ethos that feels that harkens to something that was restrictive for us or oppressive.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, colonial architecture is something that uh, we may have an issue with
Yeah.
because of what it represents, and we see and we respect the history of seeing plantations and what they were in their day and time, but nobody really wants to live in something that looks like a plantation home.
Wow. That is so funny that you said that because I have a friend, and I can say this because I know he's not going to listen, but he,
Mhm.
he he has his house and it has like a balcony on top, and
Mhm.
I can see like Scarlett O'Hara coming out and 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 talking, in Gone with the Wind. And when I first went, it's got a beautiful house, but
Mhm.
when I was there, I was like, I could never live in here because of that balcony. And it's
Yeah.
interesting you were saying that a Black architect may be more sensitive to that. Like, well, we're not going to have that. If it's a movie theater, we're not going to have a balcony in a movie theater because that brings bad memories to older folks like me.
Mhm.
But I had never thought about those kind of just the way the structure is laid out.
Yeah, we're more sensitive to it. And there's nothing wrong, let me go on the record to say with that. People,
Yeah,
they love it and it's lovely, but we have to be sensitive to the fact that we're designing environments and spaces and places that should feel welcoming to all. They're normally in the public sphere. I don't do work for some, rich millionaire on an exclusive estate that,
yeah,
you know, my work and my career will always be in the public realm. And so I think for those of us that are in that space that do think that we can make an impact, um, in our careers on this society through work, I stay in the public realm to do that. And I know in the public realm, you have to understand that people, the diversity of people that you're dealing with, and that you can't lean heavily into something that has clearly, has done the opposite of resonate with certain people. So I say not all these styles aren't bad. There's nothing wrong with them. The people that live and love and design, that's great. But for me and what I'm trying to do, I have a higher sensitivity to that. And I think Kevin Holland would say the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Well, Zena, I thought that we'd end on how the political climate and the things that we've talked about are changing your attitude and how you see the world and how you see your work. We talked a little bit last time when we were at UVA. Now it looks like such a golden struggle. We were talking offline about Wheezy the other day, and the things that BSA was talking about back then. One of our big issues there was apartheid. But I remember thinking that at the time, it wasn't an equity and justice. These issues were not right. Everyone agreed they're right, but the question is whether it's government's role to enforce them and whether how fast we can move. But
Mhm.
it was generally in the 80s, like, we have overcome, can't move too fast. Government can't do everything for us, but obviously, you deserve equity. It was in some ways. I look back now, and I kind of harken back to those
The
times.
golden era.
There's a golden era. It's just crazy. Now, it seems like some of those values are under threat, but I think we gotta be positive like you. And also, last time we talked, you said you loved your work. You work 24 hours a day, or you work hard, and because you love it, you're doing projects about your culture and things that you're excited about, and also you've risen to the top in your field. Has this changed your attitude towards work and also personally these things that are going on?
You know, it has not. It has, I should say. It has not. It has changed me more positively than negatively.
Wow.
That's what I should say. Um, you know, and I'll give you an example. I have a client in Miami that I started working with in 2017, and um, she contacted me about a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Very, very, boy, just an African American female that I just admire and respect, and I think I have a friend that refers to her as fabulous. She's fabulous, but she called me. I hadn't heard from her in years because we were trying to get a museum started that sort of celebrated contemporary art of the African diaspora. And so, amazingly, she calls me. I was actually out of the country. I picked up the phone and I'm like, "Wow, what do and tells me of this amazing opportunity. And the reason why this opportunity that we have been kind of chugging along at since 2017. And I think I might have shared with you, every project that I work through has this long throughput. It seems like, it takes for these significant projects that are fund as you go, that are really trying to break ground either culturally or artistically, like she has a passion for contemporary art and bringing that in. Destination Crenshaw forever, to bring those key artists in. And so we've been kind of, I say, chugging along. That's the term my mother used to say, chugging along since 2017, and instantly there's a breakthrough. So why is there a breakthrough? The breakthrough is because of this moment that we're in. It's because people see the threats to resources to support arts that promote this type of expression, and so resources were quick, were efficiently, provided. So, we still have the federal government and policies aren't the end all be all. We still have the philanthropic community that's doubling down. I was on a client yesterday and I'm like, oh my, on the phone with the client yesterday, and I'm like, and this is a very privileged, they've been they say they're privileged and they've been blessed white family that is doing starting a museum that's incredible, that's telling a story um, about, about the truth about what happened to an African American community in their neighborhood. So we had a meeting yesterday, and the head of the family was on the call. He's never on the call. It's the first time I'm meeting him. And, to reinforce the fact that they're committed, they're doubling down. So, I don't know, the law of physics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I think that there are efforts that are happening in response to this that are just wonderful and good. So I'm encouraged about the future. And as African Americans, we know this isn't our first rodeo in our history. We've faced more challenges than I wouldn't say more. We've had our fair share of challenges, I'll say,
Yeah.
and we've overcome them. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Well, Zena, also one last thing. How's the Motown work coming? Last time we talked, I think you said it was a little bit it was closer to completion than the Bezos work. I think you said.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Motown's under construction.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's-
So we have the right now we are the schedule October 2026. So we're a year and a half
Oh.
before we open that, and it's going to be fantastic. Again, this was I think I shared with you, I'm not sure on the last call, 2015. I was actually just
Yeah.
remembering that the other day. It's 10 years that I've been working on this project. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a long
I
time.
would love to work on Motown for 10 years. I just love Motown. But Zena, remind me, once a project is under construction, what do the architects do at that point? What's your role once they're under construction?
That's actually one of our more significant roles when we're under construction, because you have to understand architectural the documents we put out, they don't detail every single thing. It's impossible to put that much detail in documents. So during construction, we have a little bit in the weeds, but a phase called shop drawings, where the contractor who's building the building is obligated to produce materials and products and samples so that we pick exactly what's going to go in. So we're overseeing all of that. It's the final detailings. We're also making sure that things are constructed according to plan. The contractor sometimes, rightfully so, they might want to substitute something out or do things differently. Sometimes that's a great idea. They bring great ideas to the table. Sometimes not so much because it compromises the design objective. So we're still the sort of arbiter and curator of the design and the craft all the way through. Honestly, until we're open, and now with sustainability, we move past that to make sure that the building is actually operating efficiently the way we designed it. So our role really with our clients extends well past occupancy at this point.
Yeah. So then, last question: how much longer do you think you'll want to work? Do you ever think about retirement? I actually don't. But what about you? I mean, your work is your passion. Could you do this 10, 15 more years?
Yeah, it's funny. Were you in my head with my financial advisor and accountant today as I paid my federal taxes begrudgingly? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Um,
I had to pay this year too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's so funny. I never thought about retiring. And our profession, it's hard for architects to retire, you
Mm.
know, and we were just my firm, Perkins& Will, we just celebrated our 90th anniversary
Wow.
last week. We were in Palm Springs, North Carolina, I'm sorry, California, and with all of the principals and associate principals celebrating 90 years. And 10 years ago, we celebrated our 80 years, and Phil Freelon was still alive. So he was there, and I was thinking about that. Then I'm thinking, yeah, 10 years, yeah, I'll still be around. I never think about retiring. It's not, how do you, and a lot of architects don't. And I'm on the board of Perkins and Will. So we have people that are kind of emeritus status for a long time.
Yeah.
Uh, so there really is no requirement for retirement. There's financial requirements, like you can't hold stock until you're 90 years old. You got to sell that back when you're, I think at 70 or something. But essentially, just as long as the work is there, the client's there, and the Lord continues to bless me, I'm good.
Right. And he has. And
Uh,
it's so obvious. But architecture is the kind of thing you can like for example, litigators sometimes they slow down, even though they're great in court, they can still write really well, they can analyze issues, their experience is awesome. But sometimes they can't stay up at 11 o'clock every night during trial. They lose some of
mhm.
that energy. Does
Yeah.
some of those things affect architects as well?
Yeah, you have to handpick. Julian, I see that now. So right now, I hand select the projects that I work on,
Mm.
you know. And so when I'm fully present with my projects and my clients. And so I have to be very, very careful and very selective because you don't have, I used to could go, you know how it is, you used to could go, days. Yeah, grab 4 hours of sleep here, grab a banana here, and you're all good,
Yeah.
right? No. And you're 16, nah, that doesn't work. So you do have to be careful. But the great thing about, I think, my profession in retirement is that you get to do that. So if on a project, I can.
Yeah.
If I want to work on two, I can. So I think that's the way that we kind of as architects see retirements. You can still hand select what you do and do it as long as you want to do it at whatever pace you want to do it. But fully retiring
Yeah.
from architecture, I don't know about that. That's a
Yeah.
hard call.
I think the world's going to be a much better place with as many Zena Howard structures up as possible. So I hope you continue to do it. Look, I really appreciate you doing this. I know these are really delicate issues to talk about. It's so hard to talk about anything these days. So it meant a lot to me that you're willing to do it. But hopefully, one of these days we gotta get coffee or something when you're in DC because I'm still
Yes.
around. Would love to see.
I thought about that the last couple times I was in DC, and I was like, I should reach out to Julian. Um, yeah, we definitely need to do that. It's and DC is yeah, it's last time I was there, I think I was traumatized because I was with a group of people. This was probably in February that were just reeling, and I could not find an escape from the political discourse. I'm like, send me to my hotel room and let me cozy up with something other than talking about DC politics. So you're there, you're in the epicenter of it all. And
Yeah,
geez, almost you can't escape it.
yeah, it's interesting because I think Trump he's very good at keeping himself in the news. I don't feel like it's that bad under most administrations because there's a news cycle and
Yeah,
there are times when you get news and there's times when there's no news. But
yeah,
it's a little bit unique because they love the news. That's part of it. The celebrity of
yeah,
being
yeah.
president is part of it now. So you truly can't escape. But I don't think anyone's escaping. I bet you if you live in Idaho,
Yes.
you're probably getting it all the time now.
That's exactly true. There's really no escape. I find the intensity in DC a little more heightened than in other areas. I'll put it to you that way.
No, exactly right. But it's interesting where I live. I saw very few political signs during the campaign. Like we don't put it in people's face. It's kind of
Mhm.
like part of our business, our lives, but it's not really in your face. Now I'm sure there are probably some older neighborhoods maybe that are different, but
No,
in a more transient type of bedroom communities where I live in, people
it's not in your face. Yeah.
no, it really isn't. It's people work or have political jobs. Lots of bureaucrats that are probably losing their jobs or getting called back to the office. But
Yeah.
I don't find people hostile around here. I never really have, but
Mhm, mhm.
I'm sure it's in the back of their mind, and also it's probably in their Facebook posts. So,
This is true. You learn a lot about people. I just had that discovery the other day. Somebody I thought that I knew very well. Somebody showed me a Facebook post, and I was like, that's why I'm not on Facebook.
no, it's really bad. You learn to unfollow people so that you remain friends with them, but you don't see what they post because
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
you're like, this is not going to work. I'm not going to be
You
able to.
never, you can't unsee that,
You
right? Yeah.
can't. Once they feel that way, you're just like, wow, that's unbelievable. Even
I
though look,
know.
I'm very open minded about things. I'll discuss things, but I mean there are some limits to what I want to know about people. So
Exactly. It's like, really, you could have just kept that to yourself.
really, so well, look, Zena, I know you're crazy busy. Again, I know it took a lot for you to probably to find some time for me. I really appreciate it, but hopefully one of these days I can actually see you in person.
Absolutely. And thank you, Julian. Always a pleasure to be amongst all the great folks that you have on this. So anytime. And thank you for having me yet again.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, hopefully
Yeah,
we'll do it again. Maybe we'll get a panel of our UVA folks so we can talk about some issues one of these
I
days.
love that. I love a UVA panel.
It'd be
Yeah.
great. So anyway, Zena, have a wonderful day. Great weekend, and thanks again for doing this.
All right. Talk to you
All right,
soon.
you too.
Bye bye.